1 second. We're live. Edmund, thank you so much
Morning.
for being on the first ever LinkedIn breakfast show. I still haven't even named it yet.
What are you going to call it?
I don't know. Coffee, tech coffee. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah. So in terms of your company now, could you tell us your story and kind of highlight what you're doing at Oto Health and kind of highlight the problem you're solving?
Sure. So, a bit of background about me first. So, myself and the other co-founder we're both doctors. I've just finished core surgical training, and I think it was around 6 months, a year ago now. I remember we were sat at a pub, and George, the technical co-founder, was telling me about a patient he'd seen with tinnitus and hearing loss. And it's quite common amongst medic friends to discuss interesting cases they've seen. And hearing loss and tinnitus is something that we not really learn a huge amount about at medical school. You learn the basics. Is it something serious? Do we need to rule out anything like a brain tumor or something like that? But you don't really go into any more detail. So, and it transpired that there's no cure for tinnitus. We realised he realised that this person was going to have to cope with it for the rest of their life. So we sort of looked into it a bit more, did a bit more reading, and as I said, you only learn it in very superficially at medical school, and this is something that doctors, in my experience, don't really have a good understanding of.
Yeah.
So we looked into it in some more detail, and found that the treatment options for tinnitus in particular are actually really limited as well. So the traditional pathway for someone with tinnitus, assuming they've ruled out it's not something sinister, it's chronic tinnitus, they can see their GP. GP will refer to an ENT surgeon. ENT surgeon will then refer for tinnitus therapy.
Yeah.
And they'll have to wait sort of 2, 3, sometimes even 6 months for therapy, and what is essentially going to be 2 or 3 therapy sessions. So it very quickly became obvious that there was a problem with accessibility to treatment, availability of treatment, and the cost of the treatment as well. Because if you wanted more treatment, you'd have to pay for it privately. So that was sort of the first aspect of the problem we found. And the second aspect of the problem was tinnitus is actually a really unpleasant condition to have. It's a big problem on both an individual and a societal level. So individually, we know the evidence suggests that it has a similar impact on your life as another chronic condition, such as a liver problem or a kidney problem.
Okay.
And it's in extreme cases, it can have a significant impact on your mental health, and people have committed suicide because of tinnitus. It really is that bad.
Okay.
And an easy way to see how bad it is just go on. I don't know if you've heard of Reddit or use Reddit. So if you,
I mean, I do use it, but I mean, I obviously haven't come across this case.
so there's a tinnitus subreddit with, I think it's almost 20,000 people, very active community, and quite regularly on there you see people. And this is the thing that really made us realise there's something here. You see people quite sort of commonly posting on there that they are desperate. They've had some therapy, but they're starting to feel suicidal because their tinnitus is really having that big an impact on their life. So on an individual level, it's a really severe problem, but it's also a big problem on a societal level as well. So 6 million people in the UK suffer with tinnitus, over 6 million people. That's almost 1 in 10 of us. Worldwide, we don't know the official figure, but it's estimated to be over 350 million. In the US, 10 to 15% of people suffer with tinnitus, and over 2 million people suffer with really severe, debilitating tinnitus. So there's those two things: the availability of treatment and the severity of the problem. And we thought, okay, so what can we do? How can we improve access to therapy for people with tinnitus? So we got together with an ENT surgeon, Jamil, who's a senior academic ENT surgeon, finishing his training, and we got together with a hearing therapist as well, Anna Pugh. And we decided, okay, well, let's make a digital platform to bring together all the treatments that we know to be effective in the self or the management of tinnitus, and put them into a digital platform or a mobile app, and thus Oto was born.
Yeah.
So Oto is a mobile app that combines digital therapies for tinnitus with AI-driven hearing health tracking. So we're bringing together all the therapies that have been demonstrated to be effective. So cognitive behavioural therapy, or CBT, that's the mainstay of the therapy. Relaxation therapy, targeted mindfulness, a bit of education, and sound therapy as well. So sound therapy is basically playing a sound to drown out the sound of the tinnitus, and to become accustomed to that sound instead of the tinnitus.
I mean, in terms of tinnitus itself, I mean, what are the symptoms of it? Because I have a permanent ringing noise in my ear all the time.
Sure.
I mean, could that be tinnitus?
Yeah, so that is tinnitus. So sorry, I should have
Yeah.
explained that to it. So tinnitus is defined as the perception of sound without any external stimulus. So it can range from, it most commonly is a ringing in the ear, and that can be. So I have a very mild tinnitus, and George has mild tinnitus as well, and that can range from anything sort of a very faint ringing that you only notice occasionally to sort of something very loud and obtrusive on your life, which is, it's permanent, as you can imagine, is very intrusive. But it can also present with sort of a clicking noise, or a rushing noise, or whooshing noise. There's a whole host of ways, and it can present. In extreme cases, you can have people that have what sounds like repetitive music playing over and over again. And you can also have sort of extreme sensitivity to sounds as well. But most commonly, it is a ringing in the ears.
Interesting. I mean, do you have any understanding of how much the NHS is spending on this specific problem right now? Because I mean, from my understanding, I mean, a lot of people go private with this type of problem. With my hearing problems, I go private. I mean, could you shine some light on that?
Sure. So so from the market research we've done and the people we've spoken to a fair few people with tinnitus now, and the surveys we've done indicated that actually only a minority of people have paid for tinnitus therapy privately. So the majority of people we don't think are paying for it, and that's largely because it's quite expensive. And as you can imagine, not many people are prohibited by cost. In terms of how much the NHS is spending, it's a lot more than you might think. So it's over 700 million a year the NHS spends on tinnitus alone, and the estimated cost to there was a report done by the British Tinnitus Association. The estimated cost to the economy is over 2.7 billion per year. So it's an expensive problem as well.
Is tinnitus? Does it have a genetic component? And what causes it?
So tinnitus is very closely linked with hearing loss. So it's estimated between sort of 70 to 90% of people with tinnitus have hearing loss, and the other way around, people with hearing loss have tinnitus. It's about 80% of people with hearing loss have tinnitus. So we don't fully understand the exact cause, which is probably why there's no cure. But probably the closest theory we have is that for people with hearing loss, the things that they can no longer hear, their brain is trying to replicate, or trying to fill in the gap almost. So they're filling in the gap that they can't hear certain frequencies of sound, and their hearing system or their brain is filling in the gap and creating a sound, sort of overcompensating, if that makes sense.
Almost like a hallucination, or
so it's not a hallucination. It's we've got to be careful to make a distinction between the two, because hallucinations are more linked with mental health conditions. So tinnitus is not a mental health condition.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the other thing I wanted to really kind of touch on is this problem compounding as we kind of work in a remote world right now? Because headphones are an indispensable part of the way we work, and almost an indispensable part of like our leisure time. I mean, people have their headphones in traveling into work. They like to listen to audiobooks. We're using one right now just to communicate. Normally we'd have a phone. have you seen what negative or what impacts have you seen the rise in the use of headphones?
So even before the lockdown started, well,
Mm,
over the last actually probably 10 years, 20 years, we've seen massively increasing in the prevalence, that the amount of people that have hearing loss and tinnitus,
mm,
and that is twofold really. Firstly, the use of people using headphones and in-ear headphones and listening to loud music, and sort of especially in the developing world, industrial jobs, people not using adequate ear protection.
mm,
So these tinnitus and hearing loss are growing problems. They're growing at a really quick rate. So
mm,
we know that 1 in 10 people in the UK have tinnitus. We also know that 1 in 6 people in the UK have hearing loss. Now, we know that it's predicted that by 2050, by 2035, that's going to go up for hearing loss to 1 in 5. So it's a growing problem as well. And that, as I said, is because of the use of headphones. Now, when you compound the fact that we now do, well, during the lockdown anyway, and I think things are going to change for the foreseeable future, we now do a lot of our work on calls like this, with Zoom calls,
mm,
Teams calls, and with headphones. That's actually a big problem for people with people with hearing loss and tinnitus, because I mean, I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of Zoom calls over the past 6 months. I'm sure everyone else has as well,
yeah.
and it's tiring. You know, you have to concentrate. It
Mm,
doesn't flow like a normal meeting flows. You have to really sort of concentrate on what's going on and what people are saying.
mm,
Now, if you imagine that that is compounded by the fact you have a constant ringing in your ear and
mm,
you're hard of hearing, that is significantly adds to the problem, and it makes it even harder to try and understand what's happening. And you know, there is sort of technological solutions available with captioning and things, but it still doesn't solve the problem.
mm.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. You mentioned a couple of your therapies, sound therapy. Could you kind of highlight what that is on your app, and then kind of
Mm.
highlight the benefits it can provide patients with tinnitus?
Sure. So I'll just briefly talk about what the therapies are and how they work. So
Yeah,
I mentioned
sure.
cognitive behavioral therapy. So cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is a type of talking therapy that helps you reframe the way you think about the tinnitus. So
Mm,
it's the one treatment that we have conclusive evidence that is effective in tinnitus management. So it doesn't get rid of the tinnitus, but it reduces the impact of the tinnitus on your life.
mm,
So let me give an example of that. If you wake up in the morning and your tinnitus is very loud, what traditionally will happen, your brain will think, okay, my tinnitus is loud today, I'm going to have a bad day. And thinking that you're going to have a bad day will give you more stress, and that will make your tinnitus worse. So what cognitive behavioral therapy does is it tries to interrupt or break that cycle of negative thinking and replace it with positive cycle of thinking. And we know that the evidence suggests that that it has a significant impact on reducing the impact of tinnitus on people's lives.
mm.
So that's cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's going to be the mainstay of the treatment. And the way that will be delivered in the app is we have, in fact, I'll talk about the other treatments first, and I'll talk about how it's going to be delivered. So the second
Yeah.
is mindfulness therapy, or meditation. When combined with CBT and some relaxation therapy as well, we know that mindfulness is also can be effective in the self management of tinnitus. It can help reduce the impact, and that again is, I think, largely due to the fact that it changes the way you think about the condition. It changes the way you approach
Yeah.
the condition, and it changes the way you cope with the condition as well. So your
Mm,
reaction to a bad experience, for example, can be reframed with mindfulness and meditation.
mm,
Relaxation therapy is self-explanatory. So there's a really close link between tinnitus and stress. So we know that if you're more stressed, or you're anxious, or you're more worried about something, your tinnitus gets worse. So what relaxation therapy does is try to um, interrupt that cycle of, your tinnitus is making you stressed, which is making your tinnitus worse, which is making your stress worse, and so on and so forth. And learning techniques to cope with that stress and reduce that stress can help reduce the impact of the tinnitus.
mm.
Sound therapy is the way sound therapy works is that it's largely due to finding a sound that helps drown out the sound of your tinnitus. So, for example, white noise.
Yeah.
So if you turn the TV on, or if you turn one of the old TVs on, there's no signal. You'll hear sort of a sound. So many people with tinnitus actually find that very helpful, because at a certain volume, it will drown out the sound of their tinnitus, and they'll get temporary relief from listening to their tinnitus. They won't be able to hear their tinnitus anymore. And that's really useful for certain scenarios, such as if they're trying to concentrate, or if they're trying to sleep. So sleep is a big problem in tinnitus as well. And it doesn't necessarily have to be white noise. It can be music. It can be sometimes background noise, such as the sound of rain, the sounds of nature or waterfalls. So with sound therapy, we've brought together loads of many different sounds and types of sounds, and we've made them available in Oto. So how the therapy works, the CBT, the mindfulness and the relaxation, is a progressive program of modules. So we really want to equip people with the skills they need to completely take control of their condition. So each day, users are prompted to complete a short therapy session, 10 to 15 minutes. So you start with the first module being an introduction to the different types of treatments. And then the exercises will grow in complexity as the users start to incorporate them into their lives. So with the CBT, for example, there'll be some cognitive exercises. And the way that the therapy would be delivered will be we'll have it in a sort of a headspace style. So 10 to 15 minutes per day of listening to a session, an interactive session. So Oto's got hearing health tracking features incorporated into it. So we're going to monitor the improvement of the user. Hopefully they'll be improving as they go through the course, and the user will be able to see that. And further on down the line, once we've made some further progress with product development, the app will be able to make suggestions as to how to improve the way they cope with this, personalized suggestions as to help the way the users cope with their tinnitus as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, as we embark towards the end of the interview, I mean, could you tell us about where you guys are in your business life cycle right now? Obviously, you've I saw your pitch deck earlier. You know, the app is available to alpha users. Can you kind of highlight where you're at right now, whether or not you're seeking investment?
So we are currently, so we've been working on this for around 6 months now. Both George and I are currently on our full time. And we've currently done it without any external investment. We've put a bit of money into the business, Midge, but certainly nothing significant. So George is the technical co-founder. So he's building the app, developing the app. And we have a alpha that we are testing. We're running private tests with. So if you're interested in testing this, you can go to the website and otohealth.ai, and you can sign up to that. We're planning to release a public alpha over the next month, and that's because we want to really better understand how people are using the app, and we want to use that understanding to then improve the user experience and improve the content. In terms of where we are from a financial perspective, George and I are both very lucky in that we can work as locums as doctors, so we don't need to pay ourselves a salary, so we can do a couple of days a week as doctors whilst continuing to work on this for the rest of the time. We're aiming to the other thing to mention is that we've just been accepted onto the Bethnal Green Ventures Accelerator, which is really exciting. So we'll start with them in September, and I anticipate we'll be ready to do provided that Oto has the traction that we expect it will do. We'll be ready to raise a seed round in January or February time.
Interesting. I mean, where do you hope? I mean, so when you get to the seed round, or when you get to the point where you're ready to raise your seed round, where do you anticipate your product being, and what progress do you think you would have made by then?
Yeah, so at the moment we have so the basic functionality of the app is in place. So the hearing health tracking, and there's an intro. I mentioned the introductory module of the therapy. There's an introductory module, so 10 sessions of therapy, and also the sound therapy. So the sound therapy is incorporated into the app as well. When we're at Seed, we'd like to be at the point where we have a product that people are paying for. So we need to be able to demonstrate that the people are paying for the product, and also it's growing organically. So the product is so good that people are recommending it to their friends, and that's the sort of the target we've set ourselves to. So in terms of what that means in terms of the product, there needs to be enough content on there for people to pay for. So we've got another 3 modules, 20 sessions each, so another 2 months of daily content in the pipeline to be put into the app.
Yeah, I mean, am I right in assuming this is your first business, or
It is. Yeah,
it is.
We're both first time entrepreneurs, which is pretty daunting. But
Yeah.
we've got an excellent advisory team. One thing that I learned very early on is it's really important to grow your advisory network, and I've got a list of people that I speak to on quite a regular basis and ask all sorts of different questions. I'm sure it's very annoying having me calling all the time. So thank you if those guys are watching. Thank you, but no, we've got a really strong advisory network who have been brilliant, and it's one of the reasons we wanted to join BGV as well, or Bethnal Green Ventures, the Accelerator, because those guys are going to be really useful in sort of early stage startups.
Yeah, I mean, what have you learned about business and developing your product throughout this 6 months journey? Because whilst it was only 6 months, I'm sure it probably feels like a lot longer.
Where do I start? So George and I, we've both done a lot of sort of reading before we did this, but as I'm sure people watching this will be able to empathise with, a lot of the learning you do is through making mistakes. So we've both learned, we've both made a lot of mistakes, and we will continue to do so. But hopefully less mistakes as we do it in a more supervised environment. But I think that's one of the ways you learn at this stage is by trial and error. In terms of what we've learned, I think we've learned the thing we've learned the most about is the product development cycle. So how to develop an MVP, how to test an MVP, how to start. There's all the sort of the bread and butter of the lean startup stuff, but introducing a product to market and collecting feedback from users. George, my other co-founder, is he's been a programmer for some time now, but he's really honed his sort of his development expertise over the last 6 months. And it's very impressive what he's come up with, especially considering we've only been going for 6 months. So we've learned a lot, and we've openly accept we've got so much more to learn. But that's what we both love about it. It's so exciting to be learning stuff at such a fast rate. And if I think back to what I know now compared to what I knew 6 months ago, a year ago, and I think forward to what I'll hopefully know in 6 months, that's great. We both love it. It's really exciting.
So where can the audience kind of find you in terms of I mean, are you guys still open to testers using your product?
Absolutely, yeah. So if anyone's interested so the first thing I would say is if anyone's interested in trying it out, or anyone has tinnitus or hearing loss for that matter, please just find me on LinkedIn. My name's Edmund Farrow, and you'll see me on this. You'll see me on this show. Find me on LinkedIn, drop me a message, and I'll be happy to arrange a call, and we can talk about it. And I can send you the link for the download. Alternatively, you can go to www.oto, so it's Oto with 1 T, otohealth.ai. That's our website, and you can sign up to the beta there. We're on Twitter, so Oto Health app. We're on Facebook, Oto Health app, and of course, just search on LinkedIn, Oto Health. We're on there as well. We're anticipating, as I said, the release of a public version of the product over the next couple of weeks. So that's sort of our next sort of target. So keep your eyes peeled for the public version.
Amazing, Edmund. Thank you so much for being on our first ever show. Really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.